the other hand, the A319, A320, the Airbus, those airplanes, we're seeing an increase. Delta buys them, United buys them, American buys them. So, so at the end of the day, and then we also look at cargo,
Right.
because you know there's more cargo activity at night, so we want to make sure that gets factored in. And of course, there's also general aviation and smaller airplanes coming in now. So, in 2015. We're gonna be right around 2,458 takeoffs and landings per day.
Per day.
Yeah. So in 2020, the forecast is for about 2,540 takeoffs and landings per day. So that's you know
That's
one
pretty
of the,
static then, right? Not
yeah, but
marginally.
what's also interesting though is that we're still going to have a tremendous increase in passengers. So
bigger planes.
Yeah. So as we see the 50-seat regional jets continue to decline. Currently, it's 246 of them per day. They'll drop to about 200 per day within 5 years. But the other regional aircraft that are substituting for them, the Embraer 90, Embraer 70, as well as the bigger Canadair regional jets, we'll continue to see more of those. So again, the average day activity is 2,458 takeoffs and landings currently, forecast to go about 2,530 in 5 years. And then we also want to know, of course, where are the airplanes flying? And what this board tells us, just shows us the basic takeoff and landing corridor. So like right now, the airport's on a west operation. So that means takeoffs are going to the west and the arrivals are coming from the east to the west.
And right now that means today or
like
this minute?
Like it's six.
Switches by the weather.
By the weather,
yeah,
right.
yeah, because you want to take off and land into the wind.
Yeah.
So yeah, right now it's 6:17. As I was coming over here, we're on a west operation.
Okay.
And we land and depart to the west about 64% of the time annually. You know, we know though, because it is weather dependent, you know, there might be times where we stay on a west operation for 2 weeks. Or we might switch back and forth 3 times during a day if a front or multiple fronts come through.
How long does it take to switch from west to east?
Well, that's a good question because it depends. If you know, if it's relatively quiet out there,
and you're not in a push,
that can be done pretty quickly. But if they're in the middle of an arrival push and a front comes through, we'll have to stop all the arrivals. Let them hold way out there. Clean up everything on the ground as well as the other arrivals in the air. Then they can switch it around. So sometimes it might be 5 minutes, sometimes it might be 20 minutes. It just depends because it is interesting because that's one thing they want to anticipate is before a push starts, if we have to turn the airport, let's turn the airport.
Turn the airport.
Doesn't that sound something?
Yeah. Turn the airport.
Wow.
So anyway, like I said, depart to the west about 64% of the time annually. Depart from the 2 inner runways here, and then land on these 3 runways. And so 5th runway is down here. Of course, the gates are here.
Do you call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
No. Actually, the two north runways are the 8-2-6 pair. 2 middle runways are the 9-2-7 pair. Then the 5th runway is 10-28.
Okay.
And that's
so for my purposes of being a Hapeville resident, when it's real noisy to me, I say, oh, they must be on number 1. That would be the furthest north.
Yeah, well, for those of us who are really old school, we call that one still the 4th runway.
The 4th, okay.
Yeah,
it was the 4th one to arrive, to be built at the airport.
Yeah,
okay.
call that one the 4th one. And so, so what these corridors represent are basically 95%. In this case, the takeoff corridors, the blue ones, 95% of the aircraft that take off, say headed this way, are contained within that band. And so we get the actual radar data showing the flight tracks each day from the radar, which is located on the south side of the airfield. We've been getting that data now since about 1995. So then we can take those actual radar tracks and then take the actual tracks as well as with that track we know the aircraft type, we know where the aircraft is going, and then we also know which runway it's assigned to. So then we can go ahead and for noise modeling purposes, we can make sure that we get the right number of airplanes on each runway as well as the right number of aircraft, different types of aircraft on each runway. So, so for example, we know that here on when taking off on runway 8 right, we've got two departure headings here, and this this is representative of where the airplanes actually fly based on the actual radar data that we get from the FAA. And so that's getting that data is really helpful because that really helps us. Well, it really tells us where the airplanes are actually flying. So, so when preparing the noise contours, we also weight the direction. So again, 36% of the time we're going that way, 64% of the time we're going that way.
Now, it looked like on the east departure that the top one had 3, I guess, exit arrows.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
does that mean that more planes are going that way, or just those that use that runway have the 3 different ultimate destinations?
So we've got these 2 arrows here. So when we're departing east, those airplanes that are going to go north track out that way. Those that are going to the west come here and they stay on the inside and go out like that.
Okay.
So that's how that works. And then at night, what happens is we go back to what's called the use of vector tracks. These 2 corridors are based on the use of what's called RNAV, where there's instrumentation on the airplane that allows the airplane, I'm going to say to a degree, self-navigate. So there are these GPS waypoints that are programmed in the computer. So the computer, you punch in which waypoint you want to fly to, and then the airplane and the avionics will take the airplane to that waypoint. Whereas the vector track, that's the pilot actually flying by instrument.
Right.
And so that's where you'll see those corridors a little wider because now humans are actually involved. But so this corridor is a little wider. That's used between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Okay.
So now this is a summary board that we call a stick diagram. That just basically tells us how many departures are assigned to each heading. So for example, like I said, we're going west right now. So this 196 and this 187 represents the number of departures departing from runway 26 left, the one that's just out here. And so the 187 represents those that are going west. The 196 represents those that are going north. So that's the weighted modeled day. So there are for the year 2015 we have 2,256 takeoffs and landings during the day, where day is defined as 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and 202 takeoffs and landings between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. And what's important about that is the nighttime operations get weighted 10 times because that's to account for most people are trying to sleep at night, and so we want to make sure that when it comes to these contours, that nighttime weighting, it actually makes the contours slightly larger, just to account for the fact that most people are trying to sleep at night, and so we're more sensitive to noise at night.
Think they could do anything about train whistles?
Oh, wow.
They might can drown them out.
Outside their lines.
This
We bring a 747 in at the same time a train comes by.
this board is interesting in the fact that it shows over time how the noise contours have shrunk. So this is a series of what we call the 65 decibel day-night noise level contour. So so this represents an average noise level, and I know we don't hear averages, but for long-term land use planning, the FAA tells us this is how we have to prepare these noise contours. So for example, we've got this orange one here. Now, these are all 65 DNL noise contours. So this orange one is from 1982. And as we progress in time to 82, 98, 2003, to now today, where the 2015, the area inside the 2015 65 contour is this pink area. So back in 1982, all of this area enclosed the 65. Today, it's this area that's inside the 65.
Engines are quieter?
That's primarily the reason, yes. Even though activity has tremendously increased between 1982 and today, because the aircraft, the engines are so much quieter, that's why the contours shrink. You know, we no longer have, so for like back in 1982, you know, we would have had 727s, DC-9s, L-1011s.
Yeah.
I mean, just the newer airplanes that we have now are just starting to come online. Very soon, those will be retired. So this just shows how over time, even though activity has increased, noise exposure has decreased just because the fleet has gotten quieter. And not everybody believes me when I tell them that, but
So probably those folks in College Park.
that's what the data shows. That's what the data shows.
Looks like, and the current map shows that Hapeville is almost entirely excluded from it.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
believe that's true at all because there's 65 decibels. We know we hear 65
Oh, I
decibels
know,
from time
but
to time.
again, this is an average.
Right, but
So you got higher and lower.
You got higher and lower.
okay, but
Yeah.
okay, I just didn't know how they could be excluded completely if you heard them at all.
No. We know you'll definitely hear airplanes. No one's going to tell
Okay.
you that you don't.
Okay.
All right. So, and we'll drill down into a little more detail here in the next quarter or two. Oh, and also like to see the 7 up here. So, on December 12th, we had a public information workshop at the Tech campus on the south side of the airfield. And so we had 58 people sign in, and we just had the board set up. They just walked through the boards, and we just answered a bunch of questions. So this was actually station number 7.
Oh, okay.
That's why
Gotcha.
that's 7. So, all right. So here is the 2015 noise contours. Okay, so where are we? We are right here, right now. So you'll notice that the contours are pretty oblong, west to east, and that makes sense because that's where the airplanes are flying. You'll also notice that they're a little longer and a little fatter to the west. That's due to the predominant operation of going to the west 64% of the time. So what we're also showing up here is from a land use compatibility perspective, anything that is in white is going to be using FAA criteria deemed to be compatible with aircraft noise. So that means either it's something that's industrial, or it could be open land. It could also be homes that we have insulated in the past that will be deemed compatible. And then there are a couple of orange areas here. Those are primarily apartment complexes that haven't been insulated yet. So that's what we're working on now is insulating apartment complexes. And there's still a few single-family homes out there that we haven't addressed yet, but we're continuing to work through that. A couple of years ago, we did a lot of work at St. John the Evangelist. That project turned out, I think, real well, and I think everyone's happy with the work that was done over there. So additionally, what we're showing on here is 3 sets of contours. So this is the 65, 70, and then the 75. And like I said earlier, this 65, say back in the early 80s, would have been way out here. Let's see. And then, okay, so this is 2015. We also have 2020. Now, I'll just put them kind of side by side. When you look at them side by side and you start comparing, you're going to notice that they really don't change.
Yeah.
And so, and part of that has to do with, even though there's a slight increase in activity between the two, due to the retirement of some of the noisier airplanes, it almost nets out to be like no change. The only real change is kind of down here on the 5th runway where it's got its own little contour island. This just simply has some more airplanes on here, so that's why the 2020 contours are a little bigger than the 2015. Then we go ahead and start to drill in a little bit more here. Let's see. So one thing we did, so now these are simply the 2015 contours on top of an aerial photo. And so given that we had people from all over the airport at the public information workshop, we decided to go ahead and take this board and divide it up into 4 quadrants. And so what I've got out now is, let's see, here we go, area C, because that's where we are right now. We're in the C quadrant. So let's see, so right now we are right here. So, given that Hapeville, is primarily due north of the airport, Hapeville is going to get what we call sideline noise. So that's why, the contours are very tight to the sideline, but go way out, because that's where the airplanes are flying, especially the arrivals. So, when you see these lobes, these little lobes tell a story. So, for example, if you were to create a line here along the 26 left or 26 right center line extended, you can start to see how these lobes line up with the center line extended, so they're indicative of arrival noise. This lobe here is indicative of takeoff noise from runway 8 right as airplanes follow that path. So the contours and the lobes especially are indicative of where the airplanes are truly flying.
Now, hold on.
Uh-huh.
Now, you said landings.
Yes.
So there must be landing from the west, the east, landing from the
When
east.
they flip the airport.
Right, okay, because I was going to say, if they're landing here, there ought to be no noise by the time they get to the end of the runway.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, all right, so they're coming in this way, okay.
So, when we look out here from a land use compatibility perspective, you got parking lots, you got warehouses. There's still some apartment complexes that we have not gotten to yet, a little farther out. But our general approach when it comes to doing the noise insulation program is we start close into the airport and work our way out, basically from noisiest to quietest. So that's.
And may I ask a quick question?
Yes, oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I have heard, I've never had any actual dealings with it, but I've heard that some airports have federal money to provide extra insulation for housing units so that it buffers the
Yeah,
noise.
and that's what our noise insulation program does.
And so those are like special grants that would be.
Yeah, so we will get money from the FAA annually. Typically, it's on the order of about $10 million, and that allows us to do. Right now, it's pretty much 1 to 2 apartment complexes. Good sized 300-unit apartment complexes. So when doing this work, we will first of all we'll inspect the apartment complex, just make sure it's in good, at least reasonable condition. We want to make sure that there aren't any code issues, because once we touch something and if it's not code compliant, then we own it.
Yeah.
So, go look at the complex. If it's if you think it's a good candidate, it's ready to go, then we'll start what we call acoustic testing. And so in doing that, we basically set up artificial noise and set up artificial noise outside, and then set up microphones on the inside, and see what the noise drop is across the walls, windows, etc. And by doing that testing, that basically starts to give us now a good idea as to, for example, what the STC, sound transmission class rating of a new door needs to be, or for new windows. I don't know if you've ever actually held an STC rated window, but those things, they're just massive, and they have to be massive.
Porsche has?
Yeah, they would. Yeah, but that's a great example. Yeah, they would. They have to have it. It's mass. That's what prevents the noise from traveling through glass or through a wall. It's having that mass. And so those things are really heavy. They're also really expensive. But so we will provide acoustically rated doors, acoustically rated windows. If the design tells us we need to put additional insulation in the attic, we do that. Now, of course, noise gets into a structure by traveling on air, but also you don't want the structure to be so airtight that you can't get air exchange, in and out of the structure. So then we will also put in 2-stage fans in the bathroom just to have that air exchange, because we've been very fortunate that we've done a good job in getting that balance right, because if the structure's too tight, you'll get mold or other issues in there.
Yeah.
So we've done a really good job in doing that. So the goal in doing the sound insulation is to get we've been getting about, well, you want to get at least a 5 decibel reduction, which is about a 30% reduction in noise. But we've been a little more conservative. We've been getting 5 to 8 decibel reductions. So the work has gone real well. But yeah, we get about $10 million annually from the FAA, and then we have to in that case, provide a 20% match. So we'll have about $12 million to work with annually. Yeah.
Now, that would probably go to those apartments that are in the orange,
Correct.
would be the first out for that.
So I think that's pretty much where we are. So what we'll do now is prepare a report describing the methodology, more or less describing to a degree what I just presented to you, and send it to the FAA and get them to accept the new contours. But like I said earlier, when you look at the history of that 65 and how it shrinks, that's why we want to do this periodically,
Right.
just to make sure we have good understanding as to the where the noise levels are.
Well, and it's interesting, and each of us from our own places have our own experience with it. And I noticed when we've got low ceiling, that the noise carries a little bit more.
Oh,
And,
yes.
and it seems to me also that when they're taken off, we're in that, I'm in that part where they're like gunning the engine, and then, so that to me seems like they rev it up for a long time.
Yeah.
Rather than the approach coming in, it's the rev up to take off.
When they're already
And,
on the ground, yeah.
And it seems like sometimes either Jet Base or someplace, somebody's working on engines
Oh, Lord, yes.
And they're
all
just like
night
turning
long.
around or something. And
Stole my thunder.
yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's where we get our decibels.
Yeah, and that is the all night long. And sometimes it seems like there's a boom. Somebody told me once that
Well, the bird cannons.
It's bird cannons.
bird cannons. Okay, yeah.
I could see where you could, yeah.
So,
So there are bird cannons out there, and
Never hear them during the day, just all night long.
Just a minute.
Yeah,
And
and
you-
if there's not other ambient noise in the background, you're gonna
hear that,
bird
yeah.
cannon. But the bird cannons do a pretty good job. But of course, operations, they have to keep moving them around, otherwise the birds just get.
I know where
used
you're
to
gonna
it.
be.
Yeah, I know you're not a threat.
But the moving the planes around on the ground is where we get the noise.
Yeah.
And then your study doesn't address that.
No, it does not.
Okay.
It does not.
And now, is there any priority about, say, for all of us Hapevillians, we'd love for y'all to use number 6 all the time, or number 5 all the time. So what's the priority? And now I know the pilots probably don't want that. That's longer taxiway to get in.
Right.
So
Well, I mean, the way the airfield is used, and it hasn't really changed, is, again, departures from the 2 inner runways,
Uh-huh.
arrivals on the outer runways, and primarily on the 5th runway.
Arrivals.
Arrivals, yeah.
Okay.
When it comes to the split of departures between these 2 runways, this runway typically gets a little more traffic just because of Atlanta's geographic location. Most aircraft, are trying to go north up the coast. Some are still going to go to the west.
Yeah.
And so that's, given that's up that way, that's primarily how they're assigned.
They're the ones that sound like they're flying right over us or making a loop.
When the weather's
Both of
bad.
them,
Yeah.
have spoken on why I came here. Geographically, I'm kind of up on a hill a little bit, and there's an absolute direct line from right there to right there. And what is that? That's the maintenance. The maintenance guys, I know they turn that jet around and aim it towards Hapeville and just go with it.
Yeah.
But
A
is
little
there
paranoid,
any
are we,
way
Julia?
we can turn that maintenance, develop some sort of,
With a sound wall or something.
well,
Or protocol.
yes, but
Aim in a
but
different direction.
Turn the jet so it doesn't face Hapeville. We are a residential area that actually touches the property. Out here, there is none. There are no inside this pink area, and we get it hard, and it's not every day and not in any specific hour. It's
Right.
There's no
whenever the
pattern.
maintenance people decide to.
Weather patterns that probably.
Well, low ceiling is going to be louder no matter what they're doing, but on a clear night, you can still get a lot of racket.
Right.
And also, when they land, they have to jet across the active runway. So they floor it to get up some inertia.
Right.
And
Plane moving, yeah.
I don't know if they go full throttle, but they've got to get somewhere up to 60–80% and get going and then turn it off. So we hear that absolute wow.
Yep, that's it.
As far as the maintenance part, I mean, we can definitely take that back and, because they have to do maintenance, but on the other hand, the orientation of the engines the orientation of the aircraft and the engines can certainly be altered.
That would be great.
So,
That'd be very handy.
That would solve our.
Well, Delta's hangars face us.
Yeah.
So if they pull the plane in, it's facing Hapeville, the jet blast
but
facing
also
Hapeville.
on the other hand, though, I mean, at least this part of the ramp is really low, because I mean that's quite a slope between the ramp and the runway. But now on the other hand, they also have blast fences over here
Last minute,
that
yeah.
that the engine should be facing toward.
Mhm.
So I mean that's something
Will
that
the blast
we
fence
can
direct the noise up?
Yes.
Um,
So that's something that we can look into is orientation of the aircraft during run-ups. I hear you.
And how can we get feedback so that you address this up the Delta chain of command and they get back to you, and then can you get back to the city of
He'll
Hapeville?
get you feedback.
Okay.
All right.
And what's, and I guess, obviously, we're very fortunate we're not on an east-west
Yeah.
flyway and
We're not
the
Home Depot.
approach and
That makes a
all,
difference.
but we still, and I usually tell people who come to visit, and we're out on the deck, and I say, yeah, you throw a rock to the airport, but yet it doesn't interrupt a conversation. But we do have those time periods where it is, evident, and if, other than weather, we can't do anything about that, We appreciate anything. Obviously, as I said, we're not on the flyways, but, anything is appreciated.
One other thing, I know the FAA has had a problem with staffing in the control tower.
Right.
There was some times in the last couple of weeks where there was a lot of
Go-arounds?
Go-arounds.
Yeah.
And Hapeville is the go-around path.
It is.
Right over us.
Yeah, sure would be.
What can be done to staffing it on the control tower side so that manpower issues don't make the flyovers?
The
Hapeville-
manpower would not have an effect on that. I mean, that's going to be primarily pilot technique. Either pilot is snugging up a little too close to the traffic in front. Maybe that first airplane didn't clear the runway. The pilot's I'm going to go around. So they're coming around here, and sure enough, like you say, I mean they're going to turn left.
In a big
Hard
airplane.
Yeah. Some of it might be also crosswind induced. Again, the pilot maybe does not have a stabilized approach. They're going to say, forget it, I'm going to go around and try it again. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen on radar tracks where there are times when, yeah, you might have 10 go-arounds in a day. You might go a week without a go-around. It's just really dependent on pilot technique and weather. And believe me, the pilots don't like doing it, and the controllers don't like doing it because
Yeah.
it's more workload for both of them. So there's no incentive to do it other than for safety.
Yeah, but if you're short on, if you're a control, what do you call them?
Controllers.
If your controllers are inexperienced, or if they're afraid that the planes are getting too close, then they would
I mean,
technically say.
there is possibility that, yeah, if you don't have a lot of confidence, you may say, yeah, Delta 123, turn left, hit 360, I maintain 4,000, go around.
It's just not all
Those-
rookies. They don't put all
Those-
rookies up there at one
those
time.
aircraft
they
are
offer
the
the
ones that
go-around?
you have to stop the conversation. When they come
Sure,
over,
sure.
they are low and
Because-
slow.
Yeah, and now they're right
And
over
they're
you.
gunning it.
Yeah, and they're climbing out, and they're dirty because they're
Mhm.
trying to get the flaps up, get the gear back up.
Any way to get them to go a half mile further before they
Yeah.
make the left
Well,
turn?
it's interesting you say
I mean, a
that
half a mile.
because,
Yeah.
That's all- that would make
a-
it would change
and
our
again,
life.
That's kind of a pilot thing too,
Right.
Because
You could encourage them.
they want to at least climb to 400 feet before making a turn, and then as far as making the turn, some might make the turn a little sharper, some might make it a little shallower. So yeah, sometimes if it's a sharper turn or if it's something.
It feels like they're
shallower.
coming right at us. I swear, if I thought they were going to come in the window.
Yeah,
a
it
couple
feels
of
like
nights,
it sometimes.
because they just literally turn right over our house.
Speaking back to my house,
Mhm.
Sim Street that I live on has a couple little hills, has one hill in the middle, and I live at the, not at the crest, but up high on the next hill.
Uh-huh.
And as the crow flies, if you look out my house and look, you can see the airport. There's
Okay,
nothing
okay.
in the way.
Yeah.
My house got insulation in '94.
Okay.
And it got
Storm doors?
storm windows.
Storm
Okay.
windows
Yeah.
and the
Um,
doors.
But the walls did not get insulated. The sound comes right through. And I'm talking night when it's quiet,
Mhm.
the sound just goes through in the wintertime, there's no leaves on the trees,
Yeah, yeah.
straight in my window. Is there any way that I could be reimbursed, because I'm redoing my house, I'm insulating the walls, I'm gonna take the outside off to insulate the walls. Is there any way that I can get some rebate?
To be honest with you, no. The FAA tells us, and I ask probably twice a year, can we ever go back and use federal funding to readdress a house? They say, no, we only get to address it once.
Well, you're readdressing a different issue.
Well, and then additionally, if you're up here, I mean, you're outside the contours. That's the other thing. I'm just being honest with you.
It doesn't sound like it, though, when they come,
I understand.
when they circle around. I mean, it really feels like they're fixing to land on the porch. It's really weird and kind of scary.
Right.
Well, if you just want to put a bug in their ear to extend the turnaround,
Yeah.
let them go over the post office and.
Yeah.
Just a gentle suggestion.
Anything but us.
Yeah.
On either side of
And you can't force them, obviously, but
There is
it would be
industrial.
nice.
Here is industrial, and there is industrial. So they aim for the green, I guess.
Well,
Seriously.
actually, yeah, if they're climbing out, they can't see in front.
Right, or down.
Yeah, they can't see right, so they're not actually aiming for green. But and that's the other thing is that when they execute a go around, it depends upon, do they start to go around here? Do they start it here? Do they start it like really late here? It just depends. That's something else that affects when that airplane turns north, where it's crossing. So that's where we are. I guess the good news is that if I had brought in some 2012s or 2007s, I mean, they wouldn't look a whole lot different. Meaning the noise environment, at least it's not getting worse. Even though the contours have continued to shrink, I'm not really sure how much more they can shrink.
Well, I'm encouraged by the fact that 2020 is only marginally more takeoff and landings,
Yeah.
from like 400 to 2,500.
Right.
So that's good news. We're not going to try to, let's put in runway number 6.
Would you
Let's not for a while.
go over the passenger count real, I thought that was a fascinating data
Sure.
point. If you-
Okay, so we just completed a master plan earlier this year, and part of that master plan is the preparation of forecasts. For the year 2031, that's the end of our 20-year planning horizon. 2031, we're looking at 120.6 million passengers coming through the airport. Now we should in a couple of weeks here hit passenger 100 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is a little
For the year?
Wow.
For the year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
for the year.
100 million.
100 million. Yeah.
Give 'em a
Can
plastic
you
airplane.
tell me who to fly?
Give them a
on?
roadmap to Hapeville so they can spend money
He's probably
here.
gonna be the
Around
one
the
to
world like
pick
somebody.
the passenger. Yeah. But
I'll book a flight somewhere.
so right now we're a little ahead of that original forecast, but we also know that the slowdown will happen here. So even though you have this trend line, we'll be oscillating
Right.
around that trend line. On the operations side, we'll finish this year probably right around 890,000 takeoffs and landings. Now, that's a lot less than what we've had in the past, where we peaked at like 993,000 takeoffs and landings. So we'll be at about 890 this year. And
Stories.
then by 2031, we're looking at approximately 1,075,000. So
Well, it's an amazing thing, this airport, that is 7 miles from downtown. I don't believe there's any other large metropolitan area, certainly not home to the world's busiest airport, that is 7 miles from your downtown. And I think that's one of the greatest things about our airport. You know, we suffer a bit of the noise, but, you know, I think of Denver and, you know, you go way out. I think of Houston and you go way
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
And we have the little guys that are out there, but you know, for all of its, you know, comings and goings, I like being north, our little island just north of the airport.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We live in the best place in the universe.
And then also the other thing I did not mention is to make it clear, for this 2020 set of contours, we're not proposing changing any flight paths. So yeah, we're not going to suddenly start having departures, you know, go this way. No.
Thanks for
Okay,
clarifying.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
You got that on the tape, right?
Oh, yes.
You sure can turn them south if you want to.
Yeah.
More folks to Florida.
Riverdale would love it. Well, any other questions or comments? These guys are great to work with. I've really enjoyed getting to know a little bit of this information, and they've just been very responsive every time I've called.
Got an additional. Who does maintenance besides Delta?
So Southwest does maintenance up in
In that hangar.
in their hangar up there.
Near College Park.
So it's on the other end.
A quadrant,
A quadrant, yeah, I guess that's
Uh-huh.
where it is, yeah. Here.
up in
Going out
A.
towards the
Yeah,
interstate.
so that's right.
Exactly
Okay.
right.
Yeah, so
Literally right.
Delta down here, Southwest up there.
So where this is focused directly at Delta Tech Ops.
Yeah, I'd like to think that due to the presence of other buildings in here, that would kind of block the sound, so it's strictly Delta.
Yeah, let me clarify something, just for those of us who don't understand some of this.
Sure, sure,
There's no more money available if you have already had work done.
that's correct.
That's what I wanted
That's what
to,
the
because
FAA tells
some
us.
people are going to ask, and
Right.
we try to,
Individual homeowners aren't eligible for the noise abatement.
If they've already been treated.
If they've already been treated. If they
Right.
haven't, then who do they contact? How do they
Yeah,
do
can they
that
apply?
process?
I mean, if they haven't, which would be, I mean, I think there still might be a couple of homes, I think right in here, and we would have already at least talked to them.
Right. And so that yellow line is your bright line. In other words,
That's the
if you're
bright line.
lying to the
Correct.
north of that, you can forget it.
Correct.
That's- if
Well,
you're
and I
inside
think they
that-
did all of Hapeville. I think it was 90 or 92.
Yeah, it would have been a while
pretty much
ago.
down to North Avenue.
Yeah. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I was on Old
Yeah.
Jonesboro and they got
Yeah.
us.
So once the federal government crosses your pond, they don't
Well-
do it twice.
Well, and I think if new construction, you're kind of on your own to understand that.
That is correct,
Right.
yeah. Yeah,
Fair enough.
back in 1998, they set a national policy saying, you know, there will be no remedial
Mhm.
noise insulation on structures built after October 1st, 1998.
Okay.
But everything built since 70 has something that has wall insulation. So they at least have some.
Right, right.
What about, that's a noise contour, but does that noise contour reflect the ground contour?
No, it does not.
So some of Hapeville is hilly, and if they're up higher, they're going to get hit with that noise. Because, I get mine, and I know I'm not eligible.
Right.
But there may be other folks that have that elevation to receive it.
And while, because the INM basically assumes that it's flat, that the terrain is flat. And so, we know that if you're up a little higher, you're a little closer to the airplane. But, I mean, that's only going to be on the order of a couple tenths of a decibel.
I'm talking about straight line noise from the airport, not what's overhead, but
Right,
not coming like that, but coming directly like I have.
Along the ground.
right.
Yeah.
So that's one of the, that is one of the shortcomings of the model, is that it assumes level terrain.
Okay.
But again, like you said, it's a process over time. Technology gets better and better.
Yeah.
And the ability to measure that gets better and better. And at some point, they probably will have that ability, but today they probably don't have it.
Correct.
Well, I think they're trying to make the planes quieter.
They absolutely are doing
And
that.
once some of them are just weeded out by age,
Yeah.
that's
I
gonna,
mean, you know,
we
and-
say we put things through Donahue Lewis. That's how you change things. But not an airplane, of course, but still.
Is that your first term?
Yeah, which is
Oh, it's back
It's
behind.
probably
the-
on the back of the board, the very first point. No, where'd it go? Okay.
Flew
I thought it
off.
was the first one that you
I thought
put
it
back
was the
here.
first in that back, in that stack.
It's disintegrated by the decibels.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, so, yeah, along the lines of weeding out, so for example, the MD-88, that's a plane that Delta flies. That's an older aircraft, it's definitely a noisier aircraft, but Delta is weeding those out. They're getting rid of those and bringing in quieter airplanes. So that's a great example of airplanes just getting retired, either because they're older or they're just less fuel efficient. So fortunately, that trend continues. I mean, I've been at the airport now for 20 years, and so I've seen the 727 retired, the DC-9 retired, the early 737s retired. So we know it does happen, fortunately.
Well, we fuss sometimes, but it's not horrible.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will get,
And it's not every day.
no, it's not. I would like it very much if y'all put a sign up out there and say, passengers, please go spend your money in this little town right here. We could use it, and
Get you
we got nice
Uber
little
trip down to downtown
yeah,
Hapeville.
we could give them a
But
tour.
with the
Between your
Virginia
flights.
Avenue Streetscape project, that's the corridor that leads directly to the heart of Hapeville.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
So I mean, we could, guide them over here. We'll learn the languages and all.
Maybe if we get enough houses, enough residents, we can paint shop in Hapeville across the top of houses. Just one
Yeah, that'd
letter.
work.
Like Burma Shave signs. They come in like, look at that. Have an arrow pointing.
I could see that.
We
Now
could
we'll
do
put
that.
a big bullseye on Hapeville.
Yeah. Oh no! Don't do that. Oh.
But
We appreciate
do
y'all's
y'all
time
talk to the
coming out.
pilots about this and the fact that we are out here and we're